afternoon and welcome to From Where We Are. Stories of news and culture through the lens of Southern California and USC. I'm Sophie Sullivan.
And I'm Katie Havens. We're coming to you live from Studio B in USC's Annenberg Media Center. It's Thursday, November 21st, 2024, and happy early Thanksgiving.
On today's show, USC football is up for an exciting rivalry game this weekend. Student Health holds Drug Take-Back Day, and students walk out for Palestine. All that and more on From Where We Are.
But first, today's headlines. Undergraduate Student Government President Brian Fernandez announced his resignation today. He cited personal matters in a press release published to the USG website. Fernandez said the decision was not because of any, quote, dissatisfaction or negative feelings. He said serving as student body president has been, quote, one of the greatest honors of my life. The move comes just 2 days after former Senate Speaker Diana Carpio was voted out from her post. She later resigned as senator. Current VP Brianna Sanchez is set to be inaugurated as president at the next Senate meeting on December 3rd. The Senate must now elect a new speaker who will then be named vice president.
The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his former defense attorney, as well as Hamas military chief Yoav Gallant. Netanyahu and Gallant are charged with crimes against humanity relating to the 13-month war in Gaza. This decision by the court comes after conditions in Gaza have progressed, with the death toll surpassing 44,000 people and starvation reaching famine levels in North Gaza. Netanyahu condemns the decision made by the court, saying, quote, "There is nothing more just than the war that Israel has been waging in Gaza. If Netanyahu and Gallant are found on any ICC's territories, these countries are legally obligated to arrest them."
USC's recently renovated School of Dramatic Arts building now has a new name, the Dick Wolf Drama Center. In recognition of Emmy-winning producer Dick Wolf's significant contribution to the school, President Carol Folt said in a press release that she's, quote, honored that Dick's name will grace this perfect and appropriate home for our world-renowned conservatory-level artistic hub in the heart of our campus. Wolf reacted to the honor in the same release, saying, quote, "At Wolf Entertainment, we have our eye on the next generation of talent to emerge from the school."
NBC News' chief political analyst Chuck Todd will become the first ever scholar in residence at the Capitol campus in Washington, D.C. Todd is a former moderator of NBC's Meet the Press, a former White House correspondent, and an Emmy Award-winning journalist. Currently, he does teach a class about his inside understanding of American politics at the Dornsife in D.C. Spring program. In a press release, Todd said that USC's, quote, academic freedoms illustrate that academia can contribute positively to the nation's political dialogue.
Today, former Florida Representative Matt Gaetz announced he would be withdrawing his name from consideration for Attorney General. Since Trump's nomination of him last week, Gaetz has forced a flurry of bipartisan disapproval online for his role in a federal sex trafficking investigation, backlash he called a, quote, needlessly protracted Washington scuffle on X, formerly known as Twitter. Gaetz was one of 3 Trump picks facing sexual offense allegations alongside Defense Secretary pick Pete Hegseth and Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Also this week, Trump picked former wrestling executive Linda McMahon as Secretary of Education and celebrity surgeon Dr. Oz to head Medicare.
Jussie Smollett's conviction for his infamous hate crime hoax was overturned by the Illinois Supreme Court. In 2019, Smollett was convicted of staging a hate crime by paying 2 brothers to physically attack him while shouting racial and homophobic slurs. Following Smollett's report to the Chicago Police Department, evidence of a $3,500 check paid to the attackers from Smollett was found, alluding that this attack had been staged. In 2022, Smollett was sentenced to 150 days in jail and 30 months of probation on 5 counts of felony disorderly conduct. The Illinois Supreme Court ultimately ruled that Smollett should not be convicted after charges were dropped by the state's attorney.
USC Students for Justice in Palestine participated in an international student strike that called on students from schools across the world to take a stand against genocide.
SPJ students rallied supporters to the campus's Truesdale entrance on Jefferson through an Instagram post 2 days ago. USC is one of 7 Southern California schools that participated in the strikes.
And so we're here today to, first of all, just bring to light to students that USC continues to be complicit in this genocide, like while we're learning, as the chant goes, while we're learning, Gaza's burning, as we go to class and live our lives in comfort and peace. People in Palestine, people in Lebanon, Syria, Iran are experiencing like unspeakable violence at the hands of the Israeli apartheid regime, which is backed by our government and backed by our school.
That's a media liaison for SPJ. They didn't want to use their name due to concerns about possible disciplinary action. Protesters paraded banners and posters that called on USC to divest from Israeli organizations and institutions. Students on the way to class walked past protesters waving Palestinian flags, while DPS kept an eye on the demonstration from behind metal barricades that students funneled through to get on campus every day. The barricades were put in place at USC's entrances this past spring semester. Peaceful and sanctioned protests back then escalated after LA police came onto campus. Today's protest was also not sanctioned by USC, but this time DPS decided to take a few steps back. Here's DPS Sergeant Steve Allegre.
Well, the walkout is a non-sanctioned university event, meaning that it wasn't something that they got a permit for prior to doing so. So in instances like that, technically it's a violation of student policy. So we're here to ensure that their rights are protected while they have this demonstration, yet that they don't violate further any USC policies as it relates to disruption of normal business and classes and all that. Technically speaking, they're on campus, but because they're outside of the gates, we're considering it off campus and allowing it to happen, if that makes sense. If they tried to do this on campus, we wouldn't allow it.
Campus police was all hands on deck in the spring when tensions ran high between campus law enforcement, LAPD, and student protesters. This spark ignited into unrest, arrests, and suspensions that disrupted life on campus for DPS and students alike. This time, it was business as usual with students and faculty walking right through the demonstration to swipe their IDs to get into campus. Jack Palas, a sophomore, didn't participate in the protest, but expressed his support.
Personally, I love them. I really support them. I think it's a great thing to do. I know it might inconvenience some students, but at the end of the day, I think it's for the best.
No one was harmed or arrested as a result of today's walkouts. There are no plans for another walkout or any other protest as of now. For Annenberg Media, I'm Eric Trevino.
That was Eric Trevino with the story.
The sun will come out. Nothing good ever comes easy. I know times are rough.
Today marks USC's biannual Drug Take-Back Day, providing students and staff with an opportunity to safely dispose of prescription drugs and other drugs. This ensures that these unused drugs won't end up in the wrong hands and further protects the safety of those on campus. Sam Bittman has a story.
Today is Drug Take-Back Day, an opportunity for students, faculty, and staff to bring prescription or other drugs to any of USC's pharmacies for safe disposal, no questions asked. USC pharmacies, in conjunction with Student Health, began hosting Take-Back Day 5 years ago. Now, twice a year, community members can bring their unused or expired drugs to USC pharmacies on both of its campuses and in Glendale for an authorized distributor to dispose of the medications. USC's Chief Health Officer Dr. Sarah Van Orman said the event helps work against the opioid epidemic.
The goal of it is we understand, obviously, there's lots of factors that contribute to the opioid epidemic, as well as other medications that become what we call diverted. So things like medications that are prescribed for medical conditions, but can be used either self-medicating people or can be used for recreational purposes.
USC Pharmacy Director Kari Trotter-Wall said that by offering a safe, destigmatized space to drop off unneeded drugs, Take-Back Day can potentially save lives.
Sometimes people don't always go to the doctor for themselves. And a lot of the time right now is my peers are my clinicians. If someone had something that was sick and it looks like what you could possibly have, then, oh, maybe I should take that too.
Wall explained further that when drugs are left unattended in shared medicine cabinets, they can end up being used improperly.
If you're taking someone else's medication, you have no idea whether you're allergic to that, if there's something in there, or maybe even if it's not even right for the condition that you're trying to treat. Symptoms look the same, but the disease that you're treating isn't always the same. So it's important to make sure that people are only taking what's been prescribed for them, only being screened by a pharmacist for allergies and things of that nature, and not sharing. The whole point of this is to make sure that we try to minimize the sharing of medications that are just sitting in people's cabinets.
What's more, Dr. Van Orman said that the program creates a pathway for the proper disposal of drugs, as opposed to letting them end up in the environment or in landfills.
It also goes to other medicines that we don't want to necessarily have flushed down the toilet or put in the food supply or the water supply, like antibiotics or a whole range of medicines that by using a drug take back event, you can assure those are destroyed properly and then the chemicals aren't actually, kind of released in a way that can be potentially toxic as well.
So, the event is a biannual reminder to clean out your cupboards and prevent harm before it happens, either to you, someone you love, or the planet you live on. The pharmacy accepts the medications at King Hall on the University Park campus, the Healthcare Center 1 at the Health Science campus, and the Verdugo Hills Pharmacy in Glendale. For Annenberg Media, I'm Sam Bittman.
I'm Sophie Sullivan. We're glad you're with us for From Where We Are.
And I'm Katie Havens. It's about 1:15. Coming up, we head to Oaxacan restaurant to check out their Thanksgiving dishes. And Dr. Kelly Greco teaches us how to have uncomfortable conversations with family. But first, a Latino fraternity is in the giving spirit. Today, the Sigma Lambda Delta Beta International Fraternity held a special Thanksgiving lunch for USC's Aramac workers, contracted staff who do custodial work around campus. The event at the Ronald Tudor Center included food, entertainment, and a great big thank you to workers who are often overlooked. Enzo Luna has the story.
The USC fraternity Sigma Lambda Beta International treated the custodial workers to a celebration to recognize their hard work throughout the year. Matthew Vega, a member of SLB, expressed how important it is to give back during the holiday season.
We've always thought about doing it right before, right around Thanksgiving, right before Christmas, just as a way of saying thank you. I think it correlates really well with the time period we're in.
Last year, the student organization had enough funding to provide goodie bags which included Christmas mugs for all in attendance. They couldn't quite afford that this year, but the celebration went on with food, music, and a dance performance. One of the Aramark workers who attended is Juanita Reyes, a custodian who's worked at USC for 29 years.
Yo estoy muy contenta y muy orgullosa de ustedes y más que todo agradecida con ustedes por contar con nosotros, pues que nos den las gracias.
Reyes said she felt immense gratitude and joy from the USC community, acknowledging their hard work around the campus. Sigma Lambda Beta, a historically Latino fraternity, began this tradition a decade ago. After a few years off, they revived the thank you events about 3 years ago and plan to do it again next year. For Annenberg Media, I'm Enzo Luna.
Thanksgiving in multicultural LA is about much more than turkey and mashed potatoes. Different cultures bring different dishes and flavors to the dinner table. We visited one LA restaurant that prepares Thanksgiving feasts Oaxacan style. Lauren Miller has the story.
Oh, there, see? Mira, look.
I'm in the kitchen with Paulina Lopez Velasquez, co-owner of the popular LA restaurant Galagatse. Here at this long-established Mexican eatery, the staff is getting ready for its annual Thanksgiving special. Turkey, yes, but with mole and all the Oaxacan-style fixings. Lopez, whose parents started this restaurant 30 years ago, says their Thanksgiving tradition began with their mom.
So my mom actually started making the Thanksgiving dinners, but she made it Oaxacan style. Like our stuffing at our table has chorizo instead of, having the traditional stuff. The sides that we have is like refried beans. We have our very famous green spaghetti, which has chiles poblanos. We make flan we make candied pumpkin instead of having like a pumpkin pie, or we do flan instead of doing that. We eat it with bolillos.
For many years, the restaurant has served pre-ordered Thanksgiving meals to customers. For some, it's a taste of home. Lopez says turkey is in fact a staple in southern Mexico, but it's served differently than the typical Thanksgiving bird.
Instead of gravy, we put mole on it, and then we actually make it in barbacoa, which is with chiles, guajillo chiles, and it's also cooked with avocado leaf. So we make it our own style.
Lopez's turkey is just one example of the variety of Thanksgiving meals served around Los Angeles, where people from around the world have fused American traditions with their own.
We are in LA, right? It's a very multicultural, multifaceted place, and a lot of the cultures, we feel like we're different, but if you really think about it, we're very similar.
The restaurant will be very busy this week. Orders for the Thanksgiving special must be placed by next Monday. For Annenberg Radio News, I'm Lauren Miller.
Thanksgiving is next week, and some families will have arguments on the menu, especially after this month's election. Dr. Kelly Greco, a licensed psychologist and USC student health counselor, shared some ways to navigate these tense situations with our reporter, Malcolm Caminero.
Awesome. Thank you for spending your time with us for a little bit. Post-election, I know there's a lot of topics and things being thrown in the air, and then we'll see how that plays out throughout the rest of the administration. But we're headed into holiday season. Thanksgiving coming up right around the corner, and I know for myself and my family, there's always 3 S's that happen. There's some singing, there's some stuffing, and there's some shouting. How can students sort of mentally prepare for a potentially tense visit back home with dinner and table discussions with different family members of varying political views?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is that we have to ask ourselves, what am I anxious or stressed about? So if I'm feeling the stress in my body or just feeling the emotion, which happens to all of us, what is it that I'm stressed out about? Am I stressed out that someone may bring up a certain topic? Am I afraid of just engaging in a certain kind of conversation? So I think you have to identify what you're worried about. And then what I always tell students is we have to focus on what we can control and let go of what we can't. So I'm going to go in with a plan of action. Just like how you study for a test or a job interview or for an internship, you go in with a plan of action and strategy. So identifying where the stress is originating, like I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of this being said, I'm afraid of being asked this. So, and then in terms of, okay, if that happens, what's my plan of action? What can I do?
Off that note of like having a plan of action, are there kind of strategies to identify and manage those personal triggers when those heated conversations may come up?
One of the first things that I always tell students is to take you out of your vocabulary. When you say you did this or you said this, it raises our defenses and it doesn't diffuse the anxiety. So it makes it worse. So always start with I statements. Just remember I need, I'm hearing, I notice, I observe, right? So if I'm talking about my own personal experience or what I'm observing, no one can take that away from me. But when you start out the gate saying you did this or you said this, we get defensive. And those are when the walls go up. And that is when we then may transition more into a debate versus a dialogue. The goal is to have a dialogue, not a debate.
I love that. That's a great notion of kind of making sure that it's still a conversation at its base point. In cases where those conversations may become heated, are there some ways to sort of de-escalate it a little bit?
I think the first thing is we've got to take a breath and we have to pause. So this is where I ask myself, where in my body do I feel stressed? Is it a stomach ache? My body's tense. I feel angry, irritated, sad, whatever it is, to own it. And just deep breath in through my nose, out through my mouth, because that lowers my heart rate. And if my heart rate is lowered and I'm getting my body physiologically to calm down, I'm going to respond in a way that's more effective. And I'm not going to have that rigid thinking where I go into this like fight or flight stress response. I need to attack. I need to shut down, that kind of thing. So just buy some time by not responding, because we all know as human beings, if I respond impulsively or too quickly, I may say something I regret. I may increase just the stress level within myself and not diffuse the anxiety. Think about before you react. Because if I'm creating a dialogue versus a debate, I am thinking about what's going on with me, how do I manage it? And then I'm also listening to the other person.
I love that. And I know my mom used to always say you have two ears and one mouth for a reason. And you gotta
Mm.
internalize stuff first before responding, because 9 times out of 10, if you respond out of anger, it's probably something that you either wouldn't have said or shouldn't have said, and now you kind of can't walk it back a little bit. On that note, are there any like maybe key phrases or techniques you sort of mentioned, maybe taking a deep breath, maybe leaving the room, that can sort of redirect conversations when it steers into uncomfortable territory a little bit?
At the end of the day, we just want to be heard and validated and accepted unconditionally. So, my experience in terms of being heard and validated. So, if I'm speaking with someone that they have this belief and there's not an opportunity or there's not reciprocating, like, let's talk about this, let's hear your side and my side, like we all have different perspectives that shape who we are. And so I think in terms of just I listen more if I know it's going to go down the route of debate and I don't want to debate. I can only focus on what I can control, right? So sometimes we quickly get into situations where we're trying to change someone's opinion or trying to let them know our perspective or our experience when we need to kind of look, is that person in front of me open to hearing about it and they're curious? So even if it's not reciprocated, really encourage flexibility in my thinking, curiosity, and really, again, I feel like it's so simple, but it's so hard when we are in times of conflict and tension, or if someone is saying something that's activating, is kindness and empathy, right? It's really easy to be kind and empathetic to someone that gets me, that understands me, that loves and accepts me unconditionally. But this can be a real goal for all of us as human beings of how do I may have a different perspective and opinion. They may not own and understand mine, but how can I just sit and listen and validate in terms of just that I'm hearing them? I may not agree. I can agree to disagree. We can hold both, but just like, okay, that's your experience, but mine is a little different. And I respect wherever you're coming from, but I've had a different experience or a different perspective.
I like that because it's sort of assertively communicating your boundaries without causing offense while also being proactive instead of defensive. And kind of in that case, do you have some sort of advice for someone who maybe feels alienated because their views are different from a majority of their family, or maybe vice versa, and they have that kind of offset cousin or uncle or so and so that might feel alienated to maybe bring them into these conversations a little bit better?
I think it goes back to that sense of community and sense of belonging is what buffers us from stress. And again, that comes out of research. And so we need to find our support systems in communities wherever we are, whether we're at school, at work, internship, or at home. And if I don't have someone close by, who can I FaceTime or text or connect with? So it may not be someone nearby physically, but I need to know who those people are and I need to lean on them and maybe reach out to them beforehand, before the holidays, saying, I'm a little nervous or uneasy. I don't know how this is going to go. Like, can I reach out to you? Or just letting people know kind of what you need. And then if you have a friend that is in need of something, to me, the best question is how can I support you?
That's awesome. Those are all the questions I have. Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Greco. We appreciate it.
I'm Sophie Sullivan. We're glad you're with us for From Where We Are.
And I'm Katie Havens. It's about 1:30. Coming up, we'll go live to a special esports event happening at Conquest, and then we'll be joined back in the studio by a friend of the show to talk USC versus UCLA. But first, we'll break down the latest news on campus surrounding a tradition-breaking decision. USC Hellenes called out the double standard of the university when they allowed the Trojan Knights and the Hellenes to camp out overnight in the name of the school spirit, but rejected these same rights for protesters in the past year. Nikki Mazer has the story.
The USC Hellenes, known as the official hosts of USC, released a response to President Carol Folt's recent camping exception. After some controversy earlier this week, Folt was willing to let only members of the Hellenes and Trojan Knights camp to protect USC's statues during rivalry week, a long-time school tradition. However, the Hellenes have taken a stand. On Wednesday night, the group announced they won't be camping out overnight to protect Hecuba because the Hellenes value the open-to-all aspect of this fun tradition. The statement read in part, quote, "The double standard that the university holds has become apparent," end quote. This fits with the group's goal to be involved with the student community and values civil action and social good. Many members of both Hellenes and Trojan Knights organizations are saddened that the core traditions of the rivalry week could be altered or completely disbanded. Vishu Reddy, a senior studying journalism and minoring in cinematic arts, is the director of the University Affairs of the Hellenes. She supports the stance on not guarding the Hecuba statue 24/7 and the rights of student protesters.
To really be official host, I think you need to be involved with the student community, support your student community. It says this in the statement as well, but really, like, as an executive board, we really do hold civil action and social good at like the core of like our executive board, but also of like who we all are as individuals.
Trojan Knights member Logan Christensen will still be out guarding, not sleeping, by Tommy Trojan at night this week. She is a senior studying business and international relations. Christensen values these fun traditions that have become a rite of passage and is nervous for the reactions of alumni.
I was admittedly quite devastated. I found out in class that some campus officials were upset at us, and in the Hellenes as well, because I think we misinterpreted their rule. And so obviously I was just devastated, kind of like, oh no, what are the alumni gonna say about this? Like, this is so unfortunate, because I think traditions are a really important part of culture for any, state, country, organization, school, right?
Christensen also shares her experience being threatened by USC security.
They threatened to suspend all of us if we were out at that in between the hours of 11:30 p.m. and 8 a.m., which is a little bit silly because I do work on campus at 4 a.m. and I've never been threatened with suspension. And so, yeah, we were a little bit upset by the university's reaction, especially because the Trojan Knights are the oldest student organization on campus.
Rivalry week culminates Saturday night after the UCLA game in Pasadena. Kickoff is at 7:30. For Annenberg Media, I'm Nikki Maser.
Our producer Enzo Luna is live at the Conquest event where USC esports teams are actively competing in a number of games. Enzo, what is going on out there?
Hello, everyone. I'm Enzo Luna reporting live for Annenberg Radio News at Conquest. I'm here with Joshua Kim, a USC alumni from ASUS Republic of Gamers, who's sponsoring the event. Students are competing in video games that range from first-person shooters to classic games like Tetris. Joshua, what are you expecting to see tonight as they clash in these competitive games?
Yeah, as an USC alumni and someone who's participated in this Conquest event in the past, today is it's a historic moment for us over at USC Esports. It's a time for us to get to shine in our rivalry between USC and UCLA. And what I'm looking forward today is really seeing that competitive spirit and that domination on our side. So just really looking forward to seeing that victory.
You hosted this event outdoors. Walk me through the setup for our listeners who can't see how you transformed Alumni Park.
Absolutely. So in the past, what we've done with USC Esports and Conquest in general is, using the equipment that we've had, whether it be, monitors and desktops or other, esports related equipment from other providers and other computer manufacturers, we sort of just put whatever we had together for this event. So we just had like a loose TV screen here and there, and just a bunch of different monitors and desktops. They weren't really aligned with the same branding. But here today, as a representative from ASUS ROG, we were able to provide some of the best of the line desktops and best of the line monitors for this event today. We have specifically our G22 and G16 desktop models here that our players can experience as they taste that experience of winning this game today.
So it's the best of both schools competing on the best equipment. How do the Trojans stack up against the Bruins?
Oh man, yeah, that's a good question. Well, in previous years, we've always dominated in the majority of these games, specifically League of Legends, Valorant. We struggled a little bit in Overwatch, but I think it's a little interesting this year. From what I've heard, I haven't been around the USC campus or have communicated with the USC organization lately, but from what I've heard today is that UCLA is actually bringing some pretty heated competition in some of these games. In the past, we've had some of our best players. They've played for pro academy teams, and some are actually even trying out for some professional esports teams. But today, we've lost some of these players because they're trying out for those outside organizations. And so UCLA, they're starting to build that momentum, and it'll be really exciting to watch that.
But, will a win today mean a win for Trojans this Saturday at the Rose Bowl?
That's an interesting question. From my perspective, obviously these are two different things, right? There's Conquest, which is the physical football side of things, the UCLA rivalry that everyone's been longing for, everyone's been waiting for all year. And then we have the e-Conquest, electronic Conquest, where it's where we have the rivalry online, basically, right? But in this case, we have it in person, technically. We get to see the entire electronic action in person. But say, in a win for this, I would actually say would be a win holistically for the Trojans in general. A win today, and say we have a win today and a win for the football game, right, at the Rose Bowl Stadium. While they are two different wins, I would say collectively as Trojans, we gain this victory for our Trojan pride, right? For the Trojan students, for the Trojan faculty. Every single member of the Trojan family gets to experience this, even if they're not here with us today, in person or on stream. And same thing goes for the football games as well. I feel like we're just doing something amazing here today.
Thank you so much, Joshua. For Annenberg Radio, I'm Enzo Luna. Back to you guys at the studio.
Has been a great week celebrating Conquest here on campus, and it's all going to culminate this weekend in the crosstown matchup when the Trojans square off against UCLA at the Rose Bowl this Saturday night.
Ahead of the big game, we wanted to give you a preview of the most important storylines on the gridiron this weekend. Here to discuss the game and more is Annenberg Media's managing sports desk editor and friend of the show, Thomas Johnson. Welcome back, Thomas. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me on 2 weeks in a row.
See, I get enough. Okay, so Thomas, we have talked a lot about Trojan hoops in the past couple of weeks, but we haven't really touched base on the football team in some time. What do we need to know about the team going into this weekend's rivalry game?
Obviously, USC kind of having a disappointing season, to say the least, sitting at 5-5. Not really what Trojan fans expected to be going on, especially after a huge win against LSU in Las Vegas. But the tides might be turning. New quarterback this upcoming weekend, Jaden Mayava, won in his Trojan debut 28-20 against Nebraska. I think he's really brought in new life to this Trojan team. It might be only 3 games, but I think he's been really important so far.
Right, so you mentioned Jaden Mayava starting last game, but Junior Miller Moss had started every game of the season up until that point. Moss's struggles down the stretch, including some costly turnovers, ultimately led to the benching. So Mayava took the win against Nebraska. Can we expect him to build off this performance against a struggling Bruins team?
I certainly think so, just because football and sports in general, just such a huge confidence game. And Mayava now has not only confidence in himself, but head coach Lincoln Riley has more confidence in him. His team has more confidence in him because he just has that one game as a starter under his belt. So I certainly think there was things he needed to improve on from that Nebraska game. But UCLA this season hasn't been as good as Nebraska has been this year. It's a rivalry game, though, so we don't know what will happen, but I certainly think we'll see some good things out of Mayava this weekend.
I think it's definitely restoring confidence, but that confidence was low for a reason. It's no secret that this team has struggled, to put it mildly. Some fans have even gone so far as to call for Lincoln Riley to be gone. However, he may be able to earn some fans back with wins against our rivals, UCLA and Notre Dame, these next 2 weeks. What do you think is important, or how important would these rivalry wins be for Riley, and what should we expect this offseason to look like as well?
Yeah, I think rivalry games are can overshadow so many different things. I can't remember which former USC coach said it, but he said there's nothing better than beating UCLA and there's nothing worse than losing to Notre Dame. And so those two games are the final two games on the slate for USC. I think with how, I'll say, mediocre UCLA has been, that loss would hurt a lot more. Notre Dame's a top 10 team in the country. According to the college football playoff rankings, I don't think they're actually a top 10 team in the country, but that's a discussion for another time. But yeah, I think rivalry games, rivalry wins, especially you win one of these next two, you're bowl eligible if you're USC. And so I think that can overshadow a lot of the disappointment. But like you mentioned, Sophie, expect a big offseason for Lincoln Riley. We saw him make some changes on the defensive front this past offseason, bringing over Danton Lynn. But obviously that wasn't enough. USC, even despite the poor record, does seem to be a better team this year. I know Trojan fans might not see that, but just because USC had Caleb Williams last year, that was a little bit of a crutch. The Trojans didn't have him this year, but overall as a team, I think they have been better. And I'd say just expect USC to build off of that heading into this offseason.
So speaking of offseason moves, news just broke this morning that former USC commit and 5-star quarterback recruit Julian Lewis has now committed to the University of Colorado. This move may come as a surprise to some, considering Lincoln Riley is known for his ability to coach Heisman-winning quarterbacks like Caleb Williams here at SC. Lewis is looking to fill the void that Coach Prime's son and Boulder quarterback Shador Sanders will likely leave behind as he sets his eye on that 2025 NFL draft. So what will this commitment mean for college football, and what are the Trojans' quarterback options now that Lewis is off the board?
Well, I think I could talk all day about this question because I'm a huge proponent of USC really recruiting in California. And when Lewis decommitted, like moments afterward, the Trojans got a commitment from Hassan Longstreet, another 5-star quarterback who's actually rated higher than Julian Lewis. And Lewis had been committed to USC since 2023. It had been a really long time. But Hassan Longstreet ended up being the better option. Lewis dropped down the rankings a little bit. Longstreet shot up him. He was committed to Texas A&M. So I think that's the next option for USC. And I think it just goes to show Longstreet goes to Centennial and Corona, California, really close. I think less than 10 miles by the way the crow flies from USC. Julian Lewis is all the way from Georgia. So if you're USC, you want to recruit better from California. And I think the commitment from Longstreet, the decommitment from Lewis really just proves that.
Okay, last question about football. What is your game prediction for Saturday night?
Ooh, like I said last week, these are tough questions for me to answer. But the last time USC went into the Rose Bowl, they won 48-45. I don't think it's going to be that stellar of an offensive performance from either team. I will go out on a limb and say USC wins this one. It's going to be close. I'm going to guess 27-24. 27-24, USC pulls it out.
We're all rooting for a big Trojans win this weekend, hopefully to kick off a great Thanksgiving break. Thank you for giving us the rundown. As always, we have one more sports question, hoping to jump to a different field. Today, the MLB announced its season MVPs, Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge. So give us your thoughts about that.
Yeah, I think those were great picks. And I really do enjoy that the National League and the American League have separate MVPs because Ohtani and Judge were both deserving of the award for different reasons. Shohei Ohtani was the best player on the best team, excluding the playoffs. But again, MVP voting happens before the playoffs, so that wasn't even taken into account. But yeah, I think both of them are very deserving of the award. If it was a league-wide award, I'd say Ohtani would have taken it over Aaron Judge, but both of them very, very deserving of an MVP award.
Well, thank you again, Thomas. And we hope, and I'm sure that we will hear from more of you in the future in the Sports Desk. So thank you.
Well, thanks for having me.
That was Managing Sports Desk editor Thomas Johnson talking Trojans football.
And that is all the time we have for on today's From Where We Are. Sam Bittman executive produced today's show. Enzo Luna produced today's show. And we had help from Liam Wadey, Marco Haynes, Zeta Malik, and Susan Uranda.
Our coach is Mallory Cara. Our audio director is Leslie Bearstein Rojas. Grayson Solomon runs our soundboard, and Derek Renfro composed our theme music.
Catch us live on YouTube at Annenberg Radio News, Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Subscribe to From Where We Are wherever you're listening right now. And follow us on Instagram at Annenberg Radio. I'm Sophie Sullivan.
And I'm Katie Havens. From all of us at Annenberg Radio, wherever you are, we'll hope you'll join us again for
From Where We Are. But before you go, we do have some exciting news to share. You may have caught a sneak preview of our upcoming live music series on our Instagram earlier this week. So stay tuned as we begin to roll out this brand new series over the rest of the semester.
The first episode is expected to air sometime in early December. More details are to come. So, Sophie, what are you looking forward to on the Thanksgiving menu?
Oh my God. Okay, 7 days down, and I cannot wait for the sweet potato with toasted marshmallows on top. That's like my family special.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I think I'm going to come to your house for Thanksgiving now.
You're all welcome.
But a staple in my house is my dad's mashed potatoes.
I can get down with some. I can get down with a little chunky mashed potatoes. Well, from all of us at Annenberg Radio News, we hope you have a lovely Thanksgiving, and we'll see you after the break.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.